Hello, welcome to Books in the Biz, a podcast that looks at both the financial and operational sides of success. Please welcome our hosts, Dan Paulson and Richard Veltre. Dan is the CEO of Envision Development International, and he works with leaders to increase sales and profits through great cultures with solid operations. Rich is CEO of the Veltre Group and a financial strategist working with companies to manage their money more effectively. Now on to the
Hello and welcome back to Books in the Biz. Alice, thank you as always. Our lovely AI assistant has helped us out. What can I say, Rich? What can I say? She's spot on every time.
Every time.
Perfect.
Never fails.
It sounds like the same over and over and over again. It's almost like we planned it that way. But today I guess today's show should be called "Show Me the Money" or "You Get What You Pay For" type thing. And maybe we use Alice as a good example. So Alice is, as we joke about, is our AI assistant, and we did go out and hire professional talent for this, and maybe our production quality isn't quite what some people's are, but at the same point, we're looking to provide value in the message. We're not looking to provide value in the look and the feel. But one of the things that popped up when we were discussing, well, what should we build this episode around? You have mentioned a couple things related to, sometimes you hire based on price, you get what you pay for. Right. And I think people need to realize that and need to understand what alternatives are, and maybe kind of like with Alice, where you need to invest the money to make the most impact. So with that, I guess, what was your thoughts on why we should talk about this particular subject around money today?
Well, I think that it's come across a lot of times where I've come into a client that has kind of said, this is what we expect. And it's sort of a blanket request. Mm-hmm. And you realize that even when they're paying you, they're kind of overpaying because they're not being very specific. So when you're not being very specific, it allows for people to interpret what they think you need.
Right.
And it falls back on sort of that old school, 40-hour work week. I just have to be at the desk. It doesn't matter if I'm actually doing anything. The efficiency quotient is not in the conversation where it should be.
Right.
So I think it winds up where we, as, sort of process engineers, as sort of that, person who says, here's what your workflow should look like. We're seeing it as, wow, that's just a whole awful lot of waste. But I'd like to see that in the conversation more. And, recent examples have just kind of said, look, people are overpaying for stuff because I saw somebody yesterday posted this, and I'm going to steal it because she said it's called talent inflation, where basically they're saying that, somebody comes in and basically says they can do something, but they actually don't have the experience to be able to do that. But then if you don't really be specific and test that the person you're hiring can actually do what you want, then they're going to run amok because they're going to go and get that experience and be able to say, well, this guy hired me to do that, and therefore I must have the experience. But they didn't actually do the work, so they don't have the talent. So I think that's where this conversation sort of evolved from, that, this is what's going on, that people are basically inflating their title and not so much their actual experience. So you're going to overpay for that if you're not paying attention.
Well, and I would say on the other side of this, because I know you and I have both been in the situation too. So this isn't something that we're saying is everybody else, and we've never had to deal with this problem. I can think of a couple situations where I was brought in to do some very specific tasks, but maybe the owners weren't quite they didn't have as clear of a picture of what they wanted as they thought they did. And even though you try and draw it out of them, there's still a lot of this. If there's one thing I've learned about business owners, especially entrepreneurs for small to medium-sized companies, is they want a lot of freedom in their ability to make decisions and change their mind. Mm-hmm. Heaven forbid they commit to a direction and stick to that direction to get the ultimate results they're trying to achieve, when they can say, well, if I'm not comfortable with it, I can I can create an out for myself and then go a different direction. And that's something I've experienced where, I'll be asked to do something, and I'll be, again, give it, like you talked about, giving a lot of latitude to how I go about getting that outcome. But with that comes, okay, business owner, you're going to need to do X, Y, and Z to support this, or we're not going to get the results. And then, of
Right.
course, you move along in weeks and months, and they change their mind or change direction, and now here we go again. There's
Yeah.
one client I can think of. Every 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to do this. Okay, I invest full head on into getting those tasks set up and trying to work with the team. Oh, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. 2 or 3 more weeks go by. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
we kept bouncing around. And I could have probably been a lot more effective in some ways had he agreed to, this is the outcome I want. This is what I'm willing to invest to go get there. This is what I need help with because I either can't do it or don't want to do it. And you just make it happen. And really, when you're looking at a fractional person, that's kind of what you need is if you're going to give them the latitude to do that, you need a very clear and specific outcome that you want. And then you also need to stick to that. And when things get a little bumpy, you can't just go, well, that's not going to work, so we're going to go a different direction. I mean, there's times when you need to know when to pull the plug, but there's also times when you got to get through that change process to get the results that you're looking for. And when employees start pushing back, or when, again, the owner's realizing it's probably going to be a little bit more work on their part than they wanted it to be, that's where I see the issues coming in.
Yeah. I had also, like you said, I had similar situations where, someone says, oh, I'm bringing you in to do, CFO work, and you're going to help us build this, model, or you're going to cover, you're going to cover the chair, right, until we actually get our full-time person in there. And then you walk in and you're like, okay, well, who's my team? Well, there is no team. You're in.
You build the team.
So I'm paying the bills too. So like
Right.
I'm doing the bookkeeping, I'm doing the recording, so you're doing all of these accounting tasks. So none of that really was the CFO chair.
Right.
So you weren't specific about what you wanted. Okay. I'm kind of at this level where after 30 years, I expect that I should be able to help you do X, Y, and Z. But then when you ask me to do something that I could have done the day I left school, you're overpaying me.
Right.
So again, we get back to that, the payment level, like realize what you just asked for, like learn from what you just asked for, but they won't, because they're going down that same old, have somebody at the desk. That's all we know. That's all we need.
Right.
Well, if you dig a little bit down to the next level of detail, you could have saved yourself a lot of money by bringing in more than one person, as opposed to putting one person in there and just expecting they're going to work 90 hours a week to cover you until the new guy shows up and builds his team. Well, I can't do that whole job because I don't have the team, and I'm not allowed to hire anybody. And even if I did, I'd have to train them my way, and you got a new guy coming in. So it's not one transition. You're actually creating almost two.
Well, and here's the other thing with that. You talk about, well, they need to hire people, hire staff. Maybe they get to a point where, okay, I'm frustrated with Rich because he's doing all this other stuff, and he's telling me I need to hire more people. I'll just find somebody who's less expensive, and I will hire them to do the job. And then we also run into a situation where now they make that hiring decision, but they didn't vet that person out fully, and now they're not capable of doing the job.
Yeah. This specific example I was just talking about, that's what they did. When the new guy showed up, he immediately saw the need. He needed somebody. And I told him this was what's going to happen. I said, the new guy's going to come in. He's not going to want to do half of this stuff, and he's going to want to hire somebody. And he did that. And it was a bad hire, because there was the talent, the talent inflation, right?
Yep.
I don't know what she was, because she came in, she had a great attitude. They hired her I would think because of her attitude, that she was a go-getter. She wanted to do all this stuff. When it got down to the time of actually understanding that her job was to do accounting work, bookkeeping work, it fell apart. I mean, she was starting to show that she had absolutely no concept of what we were asking her to do. And it just became one of those things where you just knew it was a bad hire, and you said, you know, gotta cut this one and get to a new person. But that becomes the embarrassment move,
Oh yeah.
because now they don't want to, because it's embarrassing to be able to say I hired someone and I have to let them go inside of a matter of weeks. And yet, if you hang on to them, the damage will be bigger than the embarrassment.
Yep. Well, and I've seen it a lot. Hire fast, fire slow, because they've made that initial commitment to hire somebody. And well, I live here in the Midwest. I know you guys out on the coast tend to be a little bit more to the point on some things, but out here we have a lot of Midwest nice that goes on. So if they've made the investment to hire that person, well, they're going to give them every chance to succeed. Now, in most cases, I accept that philosophy. I actually think that's good. But if you didn't do your checks and balances in the beginning, you just trusted a resume and some basic questions and didn't really find out how good they were, or didn't put them on some sort of, I'll call it probationary period, because that's just what it is. Um, it's really hard to determine if they got the capabilities to fulfill what you need. And then you hire that person, and it's like, oh, okay, they're not going to work out. We're going to make some investments now to try and get them up there. We're going to hang on to them. Maybe they just need more time. And pretty soon, 2 to 3 years have gone by. And depending upon the level of the position, how many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars have you paid in salary and benefits and everything else, only to find out that in the end, one of two things happen. Either that person gets really frustrated and they quit, which is what most of them hope for, is that the person will just resign, they'll walk out the door, and they don't have to confront them that way. Or you reach a breaking point where then it gets ugly and then you have to let that person go. Usually it ends in one of those two scenarios. It's not I rarely see an amicable split one way or the other when it comes to these situations. So it is a bit of a challenge to get owners to see that and understand and realize that making the investment up front, taking more time, more diligence, even if it takes longer and it's harder to find the right person, produces a better result. Because I'm trying to remember what I used to use this analogy all the time, but I believe the statistic said it was about 2.5 times salary when you hire the wrong person. So in other words, let's say you hire them for $100,000. It costs you about $250,000 in that first year if you hire the wrong person, have to let them go, and then have to repeat the process.
Right.
So when you talk about hiring and firing, it's not a cheap proposition.
No.
And you know this from the financial side. There's a lot of investment that goes to finding the person, getting the person, negotiating the salary and benefits, and then putting them in position. And oh, by the way, there's that ramp up period where they're not going to be productive. And that's anywhere from 6 months to a year before they're truly in a productive position in the company. Because that first 6 months, they're just, like you, trying to figure everything out, how it works.
Yeah.
And if you're a whole new person, a whole new department running it yourself, you pretty much have to create the process on your own. And if somebody else was in there and there was no handoff, then you're completely changing processes without any reason.
Yeah. I'm 100% for training, having a training period. The basics have to be there.
Right.
And if your interview process only identifies the fact that this person has a good attitude or a good, go-to kind of, let's get this done, the whole rah-rahs, maybe that's okay, as long as you can at least tell me that in the interview you figured out that they had the skill.
Yes.
If they don't have the skill, them being rah-rah doesn't matter, especially in a really, really small team like that. There was no team.
Right.
She was the team. She had to be expected to be able to pivot and do a bunch of different things at different times and be a self-starter. And if she had to ask how to do something on every single, everything she had to do, there was no way anybody else was getting anything done. So you were still in the position of doing what I was doing, which was do everything, and there were a lot of things that didn't get done and I got blamed for it, but that's because they didn't realize that I was doing all this other stuff. And now when I stopped doing that because I'm not there anymore, I don't know what happened, but I can I can only imagine what happened when I wasn't there to pick up the pieces and fix the accounting, which the accounting side of it, especially in the CFO office, the accounting side of it is the foundation. You know, you need to have somebody there telling you, look, we did it right. We did it according to the workflow. We did it according to the plan or the company policies. And therefore you're good to make your decisions based on the information we handed you. So I was doing both sides, so I could tell you that every decision I made was based on what I had done. So I was comfortable that I was okay there. But the new guy, had to rely on her.
Right.
There's no way that he didn't have to fix everything at some point.
And the main reason for your situation is there was no handoff period, correct?
There really wasn't a handoff period, not at all. Me handing off to the new guy, month maybe,
right,
somewhere in that range. But there was no one underneath. It was essentially I was expecting someone to come in and take everything off of my plate, and that would be my exit. So the fact that she didn't have the ability to take it off my plate, I don't know what she actually did. Like, I'm not 100% sure what she accomplished. When I left, there were things undone that I was like, that's going to come back to haunt. That's really going to come back to haunt. But it's not going to be me because I'm not here.
Right.
So
our takeaway from this, because as we're sitting here ranting about these situations, is we had to learn from them. And I guess I'll start with you. What did you learn from this process that is essentially something we're trying to tackle going forward with XCXO?
Yeah, I learned that it more than likely was my kind of spot where I realized that, hiring one person to throw them into the old school, as I said before, where they're sitting at a desk for 40 hours, isn't necessarily the most efficient way to do it, nor is it the most efficient's a good word, but I think the other thing is, I think sometimes it's better to have more than one mind. So even if you don't have it for 40 hours, I'm not asking people to go out and hire, you need to hire 5 people for, 40 hours a week each. I'm looking at it as different skill levels can work off of each other, can learn from each other. And I think that if you really looked at the tasks that you want, you can hire a varying level of people and really get a team that's going to give you what you were asking for. What you thought you were asking for in one person, ask for it for 3 fractional people, and what winds up happening is you got everything covered. You got all your bases covered, and it probably costs you less.
That right there is the key.
So that's the thing that I think, instead of sitting there saying, I'm just going to hire somebody higher up, which I've seen people do. They've said, if I hire somebody higher up, they have the ability or they have the skill level to do the lower level, but you're paying for it.
Right.
Okay. You're paying for the lower level to be done by somebody higher up, and you're tying them up at the lower level task. The higher level task is the one that suffers.
Right. And it's the higher level task that gets your company to move forward in sales or profitability or efficiency. So, when you're hiring fractional, it's not just hiring that individual. You also have to look at the overall impact on your department, your division, your entire company. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was kind of the learning lesson, in my experiences with this, is there needs to be a lot more. It's one thing to say you want a fractional person. It's another thing then to understand the commitment to that. Kind of like getting a puppy. If you get a puppy, well, the puppy's cute for a while, but eventually the puppy needs to eat. It needs to be potty trained. There's a lot of stuff that needs to go on in that. And if people just jump in because it was a cute idea, this is why animal shelter fills up, right? Because they didn't realize that there was all this extra work that they had to do to make that puppy perform the way they wanted to. And it's kind of the same way from an employee side of things. If you have specific tasks that need to be done, great. We can find ways to get those tasks done. Beyond that, when it comes to the big picture growth, there also needs to be an investment in that individual that has the capabilities and power to do that, and they need to work hand in hand with the owner, which to me, the big thing is the owner needs to commit to what they want to do.
Yeah.
And as we're coming in here with XCXO, that's a big discussion that we have with the business owners is, okay, what's the outcome you're looking for? How are you going to get there? And oh, by the way, when we go down this path, here's some things that you can expect to happen over the course of the next year or two. Are you fully on board to do this or not? Because if this is we'll try it for a couple months to see how it works out, unfortunately, that's not going to produce the results you want. We can lower the cost of the engagement by not having somebody in there full time at a salary of what a CFO or a COO or a CMO or whatever would be making, mainly because you probably don't need them that much, but also because there is going to be demand on salary and benefits and incentives that, are you going to be comfortable shelling that out? And if that person can work for you for a quarter of that time, and then you can hire other people then to do the tasks that need to be done, and that person oversees it and helps build those systems, it's going to be a hell of a lot more effective than just going and say, well, I need a CFO, and he's going to do everything from the bookkeeping all the way up to the strategy development for me.
Yeah, I think the key for us and the key message that we're trying to push to these people is exactly what you said, that it's task driven, not title driven. It's not being at a certain chair. It's understanding that this is what has to get done. Somebody gets it done. I got what I needed.
Right.
So I got what I needed. I got what I paid for. So there's an equivalency there that comes out of it, and that leads to the efficiency that we've been talking about.
Exactly. So I think that that is pretty much good explanation of what we've been talking about here. So the takeaway for me, I guess, is you can pay too little for something and get a poor result, in which case you're going to have to redo it. It's going to typically cost you 2 to 3 times more to do that. You can pay a whole lot for something and think you're getting what you need, but actually now you're overpaying. So somewhere you got to find that balance in the middle. How about you? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the imbalance to me is I can see it. I can see it all the time. I can see this imbalance that I'm trying to see, that this is going to be something that I'm going to use to get back to that balance. And I really do believe that it's finding out that it's task driven and realizing that there have been so many people out there who are so stuck in the way things were done before, and now there's a growing amount of technology, there's a growing amount of knowledge that all can be used to fulfill tasks. And I think that, people need to get out of this stuck kind of mentality from before and get into understanding that this is what I need to have done, which is usually a key piece, that they don't understand what they need to have done. But let's assess it, come up with the task, get you the right person that can get it done quickly and the right way, and they don't have to be a lingering burden in your business.
And the communication part of it. So stronger communication, so you know what's going on, you know what to expect, you know what's going to be expected of you, so that way we can achieve the results. And also that open communication when things do run into a hiccup, so you don't feel like you're spinning your wheels or wasting your time. Sometimes you just need to get over that next hurdle, and that's really what our advisors or our associates are there for. So that said, if you want to learn more about XCXO, I would encourage you to schedule an appointment. Go to xcxo.net. If you don't like talking to me and would prefer to talk to Rich, how do they get a hold of you?
My email is rich@xcxo.net, and that's usually the best way to get me.
And if you prefer to get a hold of me for some reason, you can get a hold of me at dan@xcxo.net. Rich, this has been hopefully fulfilling for some of the people that are listening here, and maybe they will choose to contact us to make wiser decisions on how they spend their talent dollars on getting their work done.
Sounds good.
So we'll now let Bob talk about how great we are, and that will be the end of it. We'll talk to you next week.
All right.
Want to boost your sales and profits, but need the talent to help you grow? XCXO is a one-of-a-kind platform to find skilled fractional executives to help develop your team into a high-performance powerhouse. Fractional leadership is a great choice when you consider the average executive-level candidate can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, benefits, and incentives. XCXO finds you the executive and utilizes their talents to build your team's experience, all for a fraction of the cost of a full-time C-suite leader. Contact XCXO today to fill the gaps in your leadership team. Visit xcxo.net to learn more.